Okay, so we're beginning at Surah Al-Mudaththir, chapter number 74, verse number 30. I'd like to invite Ibrahim John, if he's ready, to read those 10 verses.
Sorry, do you have extra?
In the Quran, I mean in the mosque, in the musalla.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم عليها 19 وما جعلنا أصحاب النار إلا ملائكة وما جعلنا عدتهم إلا فتنة للذين كفروا ليستيقن الذين أوتوا الكتاب ويزداد الذين آمنوا إيمانا ولا يرتاب الذين أوتوا الكتاب والمؤمنين
والمؤمنون وليقول الذين
في قلوبهم مرض والكافرون ماذا أراد الله بهذا مثلا كذلك يذل الله من يشاء ويهدي من يشاء وما يعلم جنود ربك إلا هو وما هي إلا ذكرى للبشر كلا والقمر والليل إذ أدبر والصبح إذا أسفر
إنها
لإحدى الكبر نذيرا للبشر لمن شاء منكم أن يتقدم أو يتأخر
كل نفس
بما كسبت رحينة إلا أصحاب اليمين في جنات يتساءلون.
Okay, so anyone for English for those 10 verses?
Which surah?
Surah Al-Mudaththir, surah number 74.
Chapter verse 30.
Yeah. Verse starting in verse 30. عليها 19.
Over it are 19, and we have set none but angels as guardians of the fire. We have fixed their number only as a trial for unbelievers, in order that the people of the book may arrive at certainty, and the believers may increase in faith, and that no doubts may be left for the people of the book and the believers, that those in whose hearts is a disease, and the unbelievers may say, what symbol does Allah intend by this? Thus, Allah leads to stray whom He pleases, and guide whom He pleases, and none can know the forces of your will, except He, and this is no other than a warning to mankind. Nay, verily, by the moon, and by the night as it retreats, and by the dawn as it shines forth. 34.
Up to 40.
Oh, 40.
Yeah.
This is but one of the mighty portents, a warning to mankind. To any of you that chooses to press forward or to follow behind, every soul will be held in pledge for its deeds, except the companions of the right hand. They will be in gardens of delight. They will question each other.
Okay, so thank you for that. First by saying welcome to everyone to the Masjid Ibrahim, to our study of the Quran. We come every Sunday, and all we really do is we have a discussion around 10 verses. And that discussion often takes, it does take some time, And I want to begin first also by saying, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, that I seek refuge with Allah from Satan, the rejected enemy, in the name of Allah, the most compassionate, most merciful. So we're starting here at verse 30, عليها 19. And so the previous discussions from last week, we had some discussions about the people whom God gives punishment to, and much of this content of the surah is about God's punishment, or about Judgment Day generally. And much of the Quran, especially in the back portions, it has this is the type of content that it has. But we're starting off at the verse called, or said in Arabic, عليها 19. عليها 19, which means over it are 19. So 19 what? And this is actually going to be an interesting discussion. It's just going to be an interesting discussion. Make sure I have all my notes here. 5, 6. Yeah. Okay. So let's move on to 31 because this is going to be a little bit detailed. So 31, verse 31, is the longest verse in this group of verses here. 31 is obviously the longest verse, and I admit that it is the most difficult verse in explaining in trying to understand. So let me tell you what the traditional understanding of this verse is. The traditional understanding of these verses, it says that, connecting to the previous statement. So the traditional understanding of these verses is that hellfire has 19 guards, so to speak, gatekeepers. That's the traditional understanding of this verse, that hellfire has 19 angels, who are guarding over hell. And this does make sense. While I admit it does make sense, there are others who have referred this number 19 to refer to angelic types. So angelic types of laws. So this is actually, some of the tafsir literature has this. That there's 19 types of basic commands of laws. One of the tafsirs I have here, it mentions certain beliefs and practices, all numbering up to 19, and that if those things are utilized, then people who utilize those things are not going to go to hell. So if people, one of them is, I had the list is here in one of these books, but let's say, for example, don't commit murder. That's on the list, right? Don't commit shirk. That's on the list. So offer the 5 daily prayers and fast and do the hajj, and these are things that are on the list. So I admit that this view also makes sense. To me, this also makes sense. Now, verse 31 is talking about their number, عِدَّتِهِمْ. عِدَّتَهُمْ. It says that their number, this discussion of whatever the number is, that it functions as a fitna. وَمَا جَعَلْنَا عِدَّتَهُمْ إِلَّا فِتْنَةً لِلَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا. That it functions as a fitna, which I think everybody here understands this word fitna. That it functions as a fitna for those who for the kuffar, for the rejectors. It also says that those who recognize this phenomenon, that's what the next wording says, that those who recognize this phenomenon of scriptural revelation, that this increases them in yaqeen, this makes them more certain that what they're upon is truth. And then it goes on to say, and that for the believers, it increases their iman. And then it says, it says that those with diseased hearts, and the disbelievers, the kuffar, that they're going to assert, what does God mean by this metaphor? ماذا أراد الله بهذا مثلا? What does God mean by this method, by this metaphor? So this metaphor, it can guide or it can lead astray. And so the point I'm making, that what seems to be being presented here is that this whole discussion is a metaphor. That this entire discussion is a metaphor, and we'll go into that part shortly. But this, again, going to verse 31, because this is the longest verse here, and it says, وَمَا يَعْلَمُ جُنُودَ رَبِّكَ إِلَّا هُ. That none knows the armies of your Lord, the armies of your Lord, the forces of your Lord, none knows it except Him. And this statement, I'm really taking this statement and connecting it to some of the previous statements, okay? Because many other scholars have recognized, and especially when they call in tasawwuf, the Muslim scholars who have really taught people about the importance of looking inward. And so they understand, for example, Imam al-Ghazali understands that this statement that no one knows the forces of your Lord except God. They've understood this statement to mean that that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, one of the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has done is Allah has put junud, forces. Allah has put forces in human beings to function as guardians against actions or impulses that lead one to hell or that lead to destruction on a general basis. So there's an innate force in us that if I throw something at you, you duck, right? There is an innate force that someone attacks you, you block and you try to defend. Give me a second, because this is important. Give me a second. Let me see. Yeah. So it mentions at the end of the ayah, وَمَا هِيَ إِلَّا ذِكْرُ لِلْبَشَرِ. So the hiya is referencing fire. So hiya, the fire being mentioned, functions itself as a reminder, as a warning to humanity. And remember, a lot of the discussions we've been having, the discussions about Judgment Day and about hell. So this is generally speaking, this is how I'm interpreting or sharing the interpretation of these two verses. But there's other things about this that I want to talk about in a moment. But you had your hand up, so what's your question?
No, I was just gonna give like another example of that is like how people always talk about the hardest part about drowning, like killing someone by drowning. Because I watch a lot of crime shows. Is that the human body just doesn't want to drown. Like even if mentally people talk about like, oh, I want to die, like you go in like a pool and your body instinctually is like, no, we have to, like, your body wants to survive even if your mind doesn't.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Any other thoughts or questions before we move on to the next part? Okay. All right. So the reason I spent so much time on this, and this is where it gets a bit interesting, is that there is a conspiracy theory that has existed probably for a good 30 years, 30, 35, about 30 years at least. There's a conspiracy theory that exists among some segments of Muslims about really verse 30, alayha tisat ashar, over to 19. And so let me explain what that conspiracy theory is, because I made an announcement today in social media, assuming that some of you may have actually looked up what we're talking about here. So there's a theory that has been published among Muslims, and that theory is this. I'm going to summarize it. That this statement, alayha tisat ashar, over to 19, that this theory is that this is revealing that there is a code, that every word, every sentence, every letter, of the content of the Qur'an is on some kind of pattern of 19, because there is a numerical system called abjad, and abjad that someone came up with this idea that, again, everything in the Qur'an adds up to some kind of multiply of 19. Now, this was problematic and I actually have the main work of the person who advocated this, and his name was Rashad Khalifa. I'll explain who he was shortly. But I'm going to tell you, first of all, why this theory doesn't work. This theory doesn't work because, for one thing, from a grammatical perspective, the text says, alayha tisatash. Not alayhi, it says alayha. What's the difference here? Alayha is referencing mu'annath, is referencing something feminine. Okay? And the Qur'an, the word Qur'an, is it mudhakkar or mu'annath? It's mudhakkar. It grammatically is a masculine word. This makes sense in Arabic. This makes sense in the Eastern languages, but perhaps not in Western languages. Okay? So what I'm saying here is alayha is a feminine word. It's referencing something feminine. It's not referencing something with a masculine pronoun. So because Qur'an is masculine and all of its adjectives, everything about it is masculine, we can't associate this with. We can't associate the it over to 19. We can't associate that with the Qur'an itself. Okay. And another reason why this theory was sort of ridiculous is by this theory, this person, the Dr. Rashad Khalifa, this person, he ended up rejecting Quran. Walaikum salam. This person ended up rejecting the Quran. And how did they do that? Because by their fangled ways of looking at things, and I use the word conspiracy theory, so they said that, look, by their calculations, the last two verses of Surah At-Tawbah are false, that God didn't actually reveal them, and that the companions of the Prophet actually put it in there. And this is what it is. I have it here. I can read it if I want to. That the companions of the Prophet, or somebody, some group of people, they put it inside of the Quran to praise the Prophet. And if you know the content, it makes no sense. Because the Quran, all over the place, gives very nice statements and praiseworthy statements about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the person, Dr. Khalifa, he went on to proclaim himself, he was an Egyptian person, and he went on to proclaim himself to be a messenger of God, and he rejected the majority of traditional Islam on the basis of his so-called discovery. What I'm saying here is that this discussion is important, especially for those who are studying Islam, right? For those who have come into Islam or been Muslims for 1,000 years, this discussion is important because, especially on the internet, these ideas are being pushed. And then we don't know how far these ideas go. So the way that they're taken to how far they push these ideas is we end up rejecting Islam. So I really wanted to spend some time to discuss that, to show that this particular idea has no foundation. Okay, the Quran is already miraculous. We don't need the number 19 to show it's miraculous. The Quran already gives guidance. We don't need 19 to show us guidance. Okay, so whatever 19 is referencing is not referencing the alayha tis'ata ashr. It cannot be referencing the Quran again because alayha is a feminine pronoun, whereas the Quran is masculine. So this works in Arabic. What I'm explaining here is understandable from Arabic language. So let me stop for a moment. Yes, brother.
Imam Shire from Majid had mentioned something about hadith deniers in one of the one of his khutbahs.
Yeah.
Is that related to what you're talking
about? It is. It's because this gentleman became one of the leaders of an anti-hadith movement. And so, they went to such extremes, really such extremes. I'll give one example. I sort of pay attention to these trends within religion. And the group was always small. There probably no more than 50 during the lifetime of this person, Rashad Khalifa. He lived in Tucson. They rejected the Eid prayers. They will do Ramadan, but no Eid. And there's no extra prayers. In fact, they would say it's haram to do extra prayers. Okay, it's haram. So they rejected the entirety of the prophetic tradition on the basis of basically conjecture. Yes.
So he really basically made something up, and he's like, based on this thing I made up, literally the core of the religion that has always existed isn't true because this thing I thought of yesterday. And
then again, that's a very good summary of what happened.
Sounds more like he was inspired by Paul. He was trying to be the Paul of Islam, I guess.
Because that's really that's what it sounds like he did. He was like, let me think of this thing I made up that there's no proof of, and because of that, and because I know I'm right, literally the prophet is wrong.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I have his work here. His main work is Quran translation, and I'm sharing it because we came across these verses. Yeah, right. And this is why I'm sharing it. Yes, sir.
Historically, for example, like the Torah and the Bible, right? They have been. I think I remember reading this in an article that some scriptures in like the Evangel, right, were taken out, and that's why in the Quran it says we have to read the Quran because it clears everything up from the past. But in history, you probably know this. Has there been verses that have been edited out from the Quran?
So that's a very good question. The question is, have the verses been edited out of the Quran? And so the answer to that is no. And let me explain why. Let me explain why and how that's actually the case instead of just listening to an assertion. So the Quran came to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It came to him orally. So Angel Gabriel gives him the words, and the Prophet memorizes it. He recites it. Other people memorize it. They put it into writing. They use it in prayers, and they use it in, for lack of a better word, religious judgments. And of course, a mushaf, they call it mushaf. That mushaf, it came later. There were people who had their own individual masahif, their own individual Quran volumes, in the time of the Prophet or after the time of the Prophet. There were individuals that had individual copies, but as a institution of having books, that institution didn't necessarily exist in those days. The printing of the Quran, for lack of a better word, the compilation of the Quran is something that came in the time of the Khalifas after the Prophet. It began with Abu Bakr, but it ends with Uthman. That's why they call it the Uthman or Uthmani Mus'haf or Uthmani Quran. That's why they call it that. And another strong evidence, from my perspective, that the Sunnis and Shiites, okay, the earliest sects of Islam, the Sunnis and the Shiites. Now, the Shiites, they strongly dislike the first three leaders, Abu Bakr and Umar and Uthman, after the Prophet. They dislike them. But they have the same Quran. Why didn't they say, hey, you people, you messed up the Quran. You go to a Shia community, Shia mosque, they have exactly the same Quran. Now, they may understand verses differently, but they have the same text. So, to answer your question, is a very important question. The Quran, as we have it today, is using the expression, is perfectly preserved. It comes to us from the time of the Prophet, and anyone who says otherwise, they're just mistaken. It's very important. Any other ones? Okay. How about from our viewers? Any other questions for moving on? Okay. So